She called the cops and screamed, "He's harassing me!" Oh, but all I did was return what belonged to her. The officer looked at me, then at the pile of trash bags sitting perfectly stacked along the edge of my driveway. Karen stood behind him with her arms crossed, shaking her head like she was the victim. "You see this?" she snapped. "He dumped garbage all over my lawn. I want him arrested." The officer sighed and looked back at me. "Sir, what's going on here?" I leaned against my truck and pointed calmly across the fence. "That's her trash." Karen let out a loud laugh. "That is a lie." The officer rubbed his forehead. It was clear he'd been dragged into one of those neighborhood arguments. But this wasn't just a small argument. Not anymore. Because what the officer didn't know yet was that this trash had been landing in my yard every single morning for the last 6 weeks. Same time, same place, right next to the old oak tree near my mailbox. At first I thought maybe animals dragged it over, or the wind. But then one morning, I saw her, Karen, standing right by the fence, tossing the bag over like she was throwing a basketball. When she noticed me watching, she didn't even look embarrassed. She smiled. Then she said something I'll never forget. "This neighborhood has standards. People like you bring property values down." The officer looked between us again. Karen quickly jumped in. "He moved in 2 months ago and already turned his yard into a dump." I couldn't help but laugh a little. "My yard?" I said. I walked over and picked up one of the bags. The smell hit the air immediately. The officer stepped back slightly. I pointed to a bright green HOA sticker stuck right on the bag. "You see that?" I asked him. Karen's smile faded for a split second. "That's from her house." The officer bent down and looked closer. Karen's voice got louder. "That proves nothing. Anyone could put a sticker on a bag." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, someone could." Then I pulled my phone from my pocket. Karen's eyes narrowed. "Oh, please." "What now?" I turned the screen toward the officer. It was security footage from the small camera mounted on my porch. Clear as day, Karen walking over, looking around, then tossing a trash bag into my yard. The officer raised his eyebrows. Karen's face went red. "That video is fake," she snapped immediately. I shrugged. "Then the other 41 videos must be fake too." The officer looked up. "41?" I nodded. Karen tried to interrupt. "This man is obsessed with me." But I calmly opened a folder on my phone and started scrolling. Video after video. Different mornings. Same thing. Same woman. Same trash bag flying over the fence. The officer exhaled slowly. Karen suddenly changed tactics. She pointed at the pile beside my driveway. "Fine. Maybe I tossed a bag once or twice." "But look what he did!" The officer turned to me again. I smiled a little. "Yeah, I returned it." Karen exploded. "He dumped it all back." I shook my head. "No." Then I pointed to the neatly stacked bags again. "I returned it 42 times. The officer blinked. Karen looked confused for a second. Then the officer asked the question she didn't expect. "You're saying each bag here came from her yard?" I nodded. "Every single one." Karen suddenly looked nervous, because the officer slowly walked toward the stack and noticed something else. Every bag had the same bright green HOA sticker, and written in black marker on each bag were 3 simple words. "Return to owner." Karen tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous. I run the HOA here. He's violating community rules." The officer stopped walking. He looked at her. "You run the HOA?" Karen lifted her chin proudly. "Yes." The officer nodded slowly, then looked back at me. But the small smile on his face told me something Karen didn't realize yet. Because he said quietly, "Ma'am, that's interesting." Karen frowned. "What is?" The officer pointed at the large, wooden sign standing at the entrance of the neighborhood, clearly visible from the driveway. Then he said something that made her confidence crack for the first time. "Because this neighborhood doesn't have an HOA." Karen blinked fast. "That's wrong. I've been the HOA president here for 3 years. The officer looked back at the neighborhood sign again, then at his tablet. "Ma'am, the county records say this area was dissolved from the HOA 5 years ago." For the first time, Karen looked unsure. "That's impossible." I crossed my arms. "Funny, Because when I bought this house, the county clerk told me the same thing. The officer slowly walked around the pile of trash bags. So if there's no HOA, you've been issuing those green violation stickers to people? Karen quickly snapped. I was just maintaining standards. Just then, my neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, stepped out from across the street. Officer, she's been doing this to half the block. Another neighbor joined him. Yeah, she put a fake fine on my door last month. Karen's face turned pale. The officer picked up one of the bags again and looked at the sticker closely. Ma'am, impersonating an HOA to issue fines can actually be considered fraud. Karen suddenly pointed at me again. This is his fault. He started a trash war. I shrugged calmly. No, I just delivered your mail back. The officer tried to hide a smile, but then his radio crackled. Unit 12, we're pulling records now. The name Karen Mitchell just came up in 2 other complaints. Karen froze. What complaints? Karen's voice got sharp. What complaints? The officer didn't answer right away. He was listening to the radio, his face slowly changing. Then he looked at her again. Ma'am, dispatch says 2 neighbors reported someone collecting HOA fines in cash. Karen laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. But Mr. Alvarez spoke up from the sidewalk. Officer, she took $200 from my sister last year. Another voice came from behind us. Mrs. Lee stepped forward holding her phone. I paid $300. She said the HOA would put a lien on my house. The officer's eyebrows lifted. Karen suddenly looked angry. They're lying! But the officer raised his hand. Ma'am, calm down. Then his radio crackled again. Unit 12, county clerk confirmed there has been no HOA board registered here for 5 years. The parking lot went silent. Karen's confident smile finally disappeared. The officer slowly turned toward her. So let me get this straight. He pointed at the trash bags. You've been throwing garbage into this man's yard. Then he pointed at the green stickers. And charging people fake HOA fines? Karen's voice dropped. I was protecting the neighborhood. I shook my head slowly. No, you were running a scam. Karen suddenly snapped and pointed at me again. He started this. He humiliated me with those trash bags. I looked her straight in the eyes and said quietly, No, Karen. You humiliated yourself the moment you thought nobody would check the truth. Right then, another police car pulled up fast. 2 officers stepped out. One of them walked straight to Karen and said something that made the entire street gasp. Karen Mitchell, we need you to come with us. She stepped back. For what? The officer replied calmly. For fraud. Impersonating an HOA officer. And multiple reports of harassment. Karen's mouth opened. But no words came out. And as the officer placed handcuffs around her wrists, she turned toward me with pure anger in her eyes. You think you won? I looked at the 42 trash bags lined up beside my driveway. Then I said the one thing she never expected to hear. This wasn't revenge. It was evidence. Karen stood there in handcuffs, staring at the trash bags like they had betrayed her. The officer guided her toward the patrol car while neighbors slowly stepped closer, whispering to each other. Mr. Alvarez shook his head. All this time, she was scaring people into paying her. Mrs. Lee looked relieved. I thought I was the only one. Karen suddenly turned back and shouted, This neighborhood will fall apart without me. The officer opened the car door and replied calmly, Ma'am, looks like the neighborhood was falling apart because of you. She had no answer. The door shut. The police car pulled away. For a moment, the street was completely quiet. Then Mr. Alvarez started laughing. Not a small laugh. A big one. Well, he said, that's the cleanest trash return I've ever seen. Everyone started laughing with him. Mrs. Lee walked over and pointed at the bags. 42 times. You really kept count? I smiled a little. When someone throws trash in your yard every day, you notice patterns. Just then, another officer came back from his car and handed me a small paper. Sir, if anyone else comes asking for HOA money, call us immediately. There is no HOA here. I nodded. Emma ran out from the house and looked at the pile of bags. Dad, why is all that garbage here? I picked her up and pointed toward the empty street, where the police car had disappeared. Because sometimes the truth takes a little time to pile up. Mr. Alvarez laughed again. Best line I've heard all year. Neighbors began grabbing a few bags to help move them to the real trash truck that had just turned into the street. For the first time since I moved in, Everyone was talking, smiling, helping each other. No fake rules, no fake fines. Just neighbors. Emma looked up at me and whispered, "Is the mean lady gone?" I nodded. "Yeah, she's gone." Then I looked at the quiet street and said something that made a few of the neighbors nod proudly. "I didn't buy this house to fight people. I bought it to live free on my own land." And that day, the whole block finally felt like a real neighborhood again.